I'd like to bring the meeting of the Pittsburgh City Commission to order. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll open the meeting for public input, and Reverend Don is going to speak to us.
Actually, I'm going to pray for them and for you too. So our loving Heavenly Father, we come before you knowing that you have established our governing body of city council members and city manager. Thank you for their willingness to serve and the people of Pittsburgh in these roles. As they consider each issue tonight before them, may you grant them wisdom from above so that their decisions will provide the very best result possible for the common good. And it is in the name of Jesus I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to submit a statement under public comments. I feel
Great.
it's important to proprovide a more representative picture of the interaction with Frontenac City leadership in regards to improvement of the existing approach to the right-of-way from Wildberry Road to Atkinson at the onset of our meeting, given the recent media coverage. As you know, commissioners occasionally meet with city manager between meetings to get up to draft a memorandum of understanding to address the maintenance of the right-of-way. I was already planning to invite Frontenac Mayor Linda Grills, who I've known for a long time, to meet just to touch base on shared interests, and I offered to Darren to visit with her regarding Wildberry Road. Linda and I met for coffee on May 28th. We agreed that together we could facilitate a meeting between city staff to discuss the right-of-way. It was surprising that at that meeting she seemed unaware that the previous Friday the Frontenac City Clerk had sent an open record request to our city clerk. With Frontenac homecoming, it took several weeks to get the meeting scheduled. During that time, Henry McGinney received 2 additional letters from Tim Fielder, their city attorney. I did reach out to Linda, and Henry responded to Mr. Fielder that we would not be responding to the attorney's demands until after our meeting. I am still unclear if city leadership authorized or was even aware of the continued letters sent by their attorney. On Tuesday, June 18th, we held our meeting, which included me, Darren, Henry, Cameron, and Matt. In attendance for Frontenac were Mayor Grills, Brad, their city attorney, Tim Fielder, Police Chief John Safuda, Public Works Superintendent Brian Cusimano, and their city clerk, Terry Coots. We had a healthy discussion. It was about halfway through that I realized that Linda's remarks were based on misinformation. She believed that we had created a road instead of paving an existing right-of-way. The discussion around this revelation included confirmation by Frontenac Public Works Superintendent Brian Cusimano that there was an existing access from Atkinson to what is old Atkinson Road, and Frontenac staff sometimes use it to access water lines. It was in that moment that Mayor Grills directed the discussion towards determining what a long-term maintenance agreement would look like between our communities. She did preface this by saying she knew Mr. Fielder would not agree with this direction, which Mr. Fielder confirmed. The agreed upon actions from that meeting were that Henry would outline the components addressing the issues brought up at the meeting, which Darren would forward to Brad for consideration by their city commission on July 1st. Pittsburgh complied and prepared the relevant points by the deadline so that Frontenac could share the details of the proposed agreement with their city council. In the proposed agreement, Pittsburgh would hold Frontenac harmless from any claims, purchase an insurance rider, naming Frontenac as the additional insured, assume all maintenance responsibilities, and not encroach on Frontenac. I am somewhat perplexed that at the Frontenac City Commission meeting, their city attorney was given great latitude to provide his interpretation of the shared meeting, questionable legal advice, and a false narrative as to the reasons for improving the right-of-way. I would submit this statement and anticipate we will discuss this further under non-agenda items to include a response to the narrative from the Frontenac meeting as reported by the Morning Sun, I do have copies of the statement from my fellow commissioners, and Tammy has some as well.
Before we move on, I'd like to open this up to our city manager to say a few words regarding this issue.
I think actually, we normally don't allow Darren to respond to public input, so I think what Don said, I think we should wait until non-agenda items.
We have in the past, Darren has responded to public input, but I know that we have decided to change that, so that'd be perfectly fine with me. We can take this up in the non-agenda portion of
That's
it.
fine,
And here's, I don't know if they want that.
okay?
Yeah.
Then we'll move on to more public input. Anyone who wants to speak before us, please come forward, state your name, address, and as per how we have always done it, we limit the comments to 3 minutes.
Cheryl Brooks, 1533 Hampton Road. Good evening. I'd like to thank the street division for repair and maintenance of the street sales, or the street tax right now around the city. This is a proper use for repair and maintenance of the street sales tax program approved by the citizens of Pittsburgh. This question has been asked of you previously, and tonight I'm asking again. Are you going to rescind the motion of the March 19th, 2019 meeting to spend $60,000 from the EDAC with a similar amount of $60,000 from the street sales tax program for the roads that are concrete in Silverback Landing? An answer to that question should not be continued to be ignored. It really should be answered. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak before us?
I have,
Sure.
is now an okay time to talk about the fact that I would not like that street to be closed?
State your name and
Jody
address.
Ellenberg. My name is Jody Ellenberg. I live on 31st Street in Pittsburgh. And we have, since the neighborhood has been built, a lot of traffic on our road, but it would be 10 times worse if that road were to be shut down or closed, and not to mention the point of the city manager on the news last night, the safety factor. You know, I would venture to say most of us would want you know, the EMTs and fire departments, that everybody have more access to those of us who live on 31st as well as Wild Red Road.
Okay.
But, yeah, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
Hello, I am Michelle Jordan, and I also live on 31st Street.
Okay.
And I just wanted to make note of the traffic. I don't want that road closed either. The traffic that would come down 31st Street is crazy. If you added 20 to 40 cars from Wildberry Road coming down our road, the traffic would be awful. The road is not wide enough for 2 cars to go side by side. The safety issue of the fire trucks being able to get down there. Right now, we have cars that are speeding up and down our road. I have called the police on them twice. I mean, it's just a big safety issue. I have children that play out there, and I just feel like all of those cars would just be awful for that road. It's just not made for that much traffic. And so I just wanted to state, also I don't understand is why is this an issue after 8 or 9 months of that road being open? Why is it an issue now? Why wasn't it an issue when the road was being poured and they saw the wood out there to pour up the road? I just don't understand, but I just wanted to let you know that I too am not happy with the traffic and that road possibly being closed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Libby Smith. I live on Riddell Street, which runs into 31st Street. It's a very short, narrow road. I think at one time it was an alley. So again, 2 cars cannot fit down that road, and they fly. It's not a through road. Usually only people that go on Riddell live on Riddell until that subdivision was opened. So it has now become very busy. I don't have small children, but I have dogs. When I walk my dogs every night with the traffic, I have to literally put them in the grass and get out of the way because the cars are going so fast. There's no speed limit sign. So it is very very busy.
Can I ask a question? What are the sides of those roads that you guys live on? Are they steep or do they have?
Just a normal ditch.
I was gonna say, I have a pretty steep ditch, I would consider
Yeah.
by my house.
That's what.
Yes.
Okay.
Me too.
Yes,
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you coming before. Anyone else to speak to us?
William Strength, 1515 Hampton. And I guess I have a question is, even why are we having to talk about this tonight? Because my question is, how did the final plat of a dead-end road, and if you look at the final plat that was approved, shows a dead-end road for that subdivision, which it extended way further than what is allowed for a fire truck turnaround. If you look at the development to the east, he was not allowed to go all the way through. He had to put a cul-de-sac in, so his lot or his road was even shorter. This was allowed to be approved by our city official, building official, allowed to be approved by the P&Z board, and allowed to be approved by you guys as a final plat, not meeting fire code because of the length of the road. If that had been taken care of at that time, this discussion wouldn't even be going on. Now, yes, he would have had to lose a couple houses to put a cul-de-sac in there to make it legal. So, you know, should have never got to this point. The last thing is, who paid for that extra road and what fund did that money come from for that concrete? Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak for us? Seeing no one, I close public input. Open up the consent agenda. Is there anything that anyone would like deleted?
Item G.
G is in girl.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? I'd like to pull out item B as in baby, E as in enough, F as in Frank, and H as in Henry.
Yeah.
A, C, D,
And I.
and I.
Well, that's the alphabet lesson for today.
Okay. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda without the aforementioned?
I move to approve.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Chenoweth? Aye. McNeil?
Aye.
McNally?
Aye.
Munsell?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye. First item was item B. Approval of the application submitted by the Pittsburgh Kiwanis Club for a cereal malt beverage license for a beer garden to be located at the intersection of 10th and Broadway during the Little Balkans Day Festival from 7 p.m. until 11 p.m. on Saturday, August the 31st, 2019, and authorize the city clerk to issue the license. My question is this the only beer garden or extra alcohol purveyor that we're having for this?
At Little Balkans?
That's not, yeah, at the Little Balkans, is this the
I
only
think it's
people?
you, Tim. I think it's you.
Mayor, we don't have any other applications, and
So
where the special event permit for Balkans Day is for the concert is outside the common consumption area. So you won't have any of the common consumption downtown as well, so that'll be the only vendor.
Okay. Since I see no further questions, I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor to, okay, item B.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thanks, Tim.
Item E. Approval of staff request to purchase a 2010 model Road Tech RP 190 paver for the Pittsburgh Street Division in the total amount of $179,467, and to enter into a 5-year lease purchase agreement with Commerce Bank Clayton Holdings of Pittsburgh, Kansas, based on an interest rate of 2.52% and annual payments in the amount of $37,701.86, and authorize the mayor to sign the necessary lease purchase agreement once prepared. Yes, sir. My question, is this a new type of merchandise that we've had or never had before? Or
No, this is a replacement.
it's
This is a
replacement?
new to us
New-
asphalt paver.
Okay,
New to us. No, the existing paver is a 1993, it's 26 years old, Cedar Rapids paver. So we've been on the search, thanks to Lanny a lot, and Lonnie. We've been through months worth of scavenging for a paver. It's going to be very similar. It's a pneumatic tire paver, which is what we want. We've priced new, we've looked at national contracts. We've went through a lot of different options to get to this point. This paver is is currently sitting in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They're bringing it to Joplin and Van Keppel. So we're buying it through. It's been through Road Tech's rehabilitation facility, so all the wear parts have been replaced, and it fits all our needs of what we've looked for. So,
and what are we doing with our old one?
well, we're gonna keep it till we prove this one does what it does, and then it's going down the road. So.
Okay.
It's limping along this year. It's eating a lot of oil. Trying not to overheat it, but it's pretty well dead. So it will go away.
And you said, I'm reading on here that we do get the extended warranty
Yes.
for all 5 years.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
I have another question. What is Clayton Holdings in parentheses about?
It's a subsidy of Commerce Bank.
Oh, it is?
Uh-huh. That's how they bid it, but it's Commerce Bank. It's the same one that we just did the flusher truck
Yeah.
through.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. If there are no other questions regarding item E, I move to approve.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, and Lonnie thanks you.
Thank you. Thank you. We thank you. Item F, approval of staff recommendation to approve Olson Inc. to perform testing and some construction engineering / inspection tasks on milling, overlay, restriping sections of North and South Broadway and areas on South Stillwell on either side of East Centennial for an amount not to exceed $60,100, and that the cost be paid from the city street sales tax. Yes, sir. Is this I know we've got a contract to do this work already. This is a supplemental.
Right, it's part of the contract that we have to do the work. That's what the contractor Heckert to perform the work. This is do the engineering inspection and project management work with that. A couple of years ago, we tried to get this part of the KDOT's old clink and new C-clip program. It was not funded through that, so we had to go through that process all on our own, and they would require the inspection on this as well. So this is just coming through us without the KDOT being in the middle.
By the way, the streets are sure looking nice up and down Broadway, and they started painting the stripes on them today. Looks good.
And just on that note, we're going to try and keep them from holding off striping further on South Broadway in case there's any questions, because they've not done all the returns down there on South Broadway. We're trying to avoid them from tracking oil and any of the new asphalt onto the new striping. So if anyone asks you why is it only half done, where'd they go, we're trying to make sure that everything gets done, is nice and clean for us to go forth and not have to have the striping be marked up for the rest of its life.
That's great information. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions regarding item F? Seeing none, I move to approve item F. All in favor? Aye. Oh, second.
I second.
Opposed? Item G, approval of staff recommendation to accept Algier Martin and Associates, Inc. proposal to create and calibrate a water distribution network model and to provide on-call engineering services relating to the water model for an amount not to exceed $16,000.
My question is, how does this work?
what it does is it'll, if you think of like our GIS model, it'll actually have a base map model drawn up. And what it does is it'll take the information for the elevations, the size of pipe, the type of pipe, the pumps, the water pressure in the system, and calculate that. And what this does is, for example, annually our fire department will go out and flush hydrants manually, and they'll also take every single fire flow and pressure for every single hydrant every time. What this model does is it makes a mathematical calculation and can tell you within so much percent of it being accurate for what that hydrant would be able to produce, as just an example of its capabilities. So they've, with going with this, the fire departments assume that we're moving forward with getting them all done this year, which this contract would allow. And they've been able to flush the system, because they're doing it 3 to 4 times faster than they did before, just because they don't have to stop and take those calculations, those measurements, every single hydrant.
So the calculations on each hydrant is from past flow tests on the hydrant that's put into the system.
That's what they check their model against. So what they'll do is they'll come up with them, they'll create the model using our GIS-based map, and our information from our production facility, what pumps do we have going out there, what pressure, what volume, and also what's in the tanks. And so what they'll do is they'll go out, and part of this contract is for them to calibrate that model, go out there and field test it. So they'll go out there, they'll select hydrants, they'll flush those hydrants, they'll take the pressure readings there, go back, work with our staff, what pumps were running, what were the elevations in the tanks, feed that into the model and see if it's correct. And then they'll make adjustments on that until the model fairly represents what's in the real world.
But then over a period of time, those water mains are aged and the flow's not always what it was a few years before. So I don't understand that part of it, but evidently they do. But Mike, I have a question for you. Are you all right with this new system? And if so, how does that keep, you'd still you're gonna have to flush the hydrants yearly, because when you do that, that removes the sediment in the line and also lets us know if the hydrant is functioning properly. So you still do that, but not take the readings, I guess.
That is correct. As part of our ISO, if I can remind you about our ISO rating of 2, 10 being no fire protection and 1 being the best. In 2017, we ended up getting an ISO of 2. It took 35 years to do that, but the water is part of that. And so they require that we have calculations of our water flows. ISO requires that we do flush the system. ISO is an approval. They accept modeling software as an acceptable way to measure that. Actually, it's probably going to be somewhat more accurate, because if they're going to change a line from a 4-inch line to an 8-inch line in a certain 2-block area, it's going to be able to calculate those loads. And I can see that we're probably still periodically going to do some tests, but an advantage, to give you an idea of how we used to do it, and you've done it many times, we would start in March. We get like 1,300 hydrants. We'd start in March, and we'd be lucky to be done by June. 2 guys every day. We do around average about 20. What we did this year is we bought what they're called diffusers. It allowed us to flush the system. 2 different ones, we basically leapfrogged over each other. We were able to do it with less water waste. We didn't have near the damage. When you're flowing our big water and we're getting those readings, we have the likelihood of breaking mains frequently. This has greatly reduced that. We were able to get it done in less than 4 weeks. Compared to months. Yeah, it's a huge save. So you look at the manpower there as well, and that we got firefighters now that are actually able to respond faster because it's saving that. So yeah, I am in favor of it. It does need to get done this year in order for us. We definitely don't want to take a step back on our ISO rating, and it is part of that. So.
Looks to me like if you're saving that much labor, this $16,000 is pretty nominal.
Right. And I'm not sure about the water usage yet. We'll get the calculations to them, but we weren't flowing near the water we were before. And that also helps us to be able to target the community. Instead of saying we're going to be flushing hydrants and it's a 3-month period and they get lost, we're able to really use SARA and other means and other mechanisms to really broadcast the fact that we're flushing hydrants and it's fast and furious, and we can sort it down. So.
Sounds terrific.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I have none. Thanks for the information. I'll move to approve.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Moving on to special presentations. Oh, H?
You want
Oh,
to-
I pulled H. I pulled H. Yeah. Approval of the recommendation of the Planning Commission / Board of Zoning Appeals to vacate a portion of Warren Street from south right-of-way line of West First Street to the north right-of-way line of the South Kansas and Oklahoma Railroad right-of-way located in the city of Pittsburgh, Crawford County, Kansas. I just was interested in what we're doing with that.
This was a request to vacate. This right-of-way was never improved. It had been platted. It only goes one block basically, and hits the, if you extended the Watco Trail further south, this is right behind First Street. So this is just returning it to be able to turn back in productive use. We don't see any need this now or in the future being a benefit to the community.
You said, who asked for this?
The property owners on either side of that.
Okay.
It'll be split evenly between the two parcels. I believe the same folks own each side of it, so they'll be essentially getting the entire thing. But by our ordinance, it goes half to one lot, half to the other lot.
Got it, got it. Any other questions? If there's no other questions, I move to approve item H.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now we can move on to special presentations. Presentation of the city manager's submitted 2020 budget. City Manager Darren Hall and Director of Finance Jamie Clarkson will present the city manager's submitted budget for 2020.
Well,
Gentlemen.
it's that time. Thanks for all the work you put into it. The submitted budget's just a little bit north of $55 million. It's not an insignificant task pulling it together, and I know Jamie's probably pulled together over 25 of them. So I appreciate his work. He's going to walk you through the timeline. With that, I will read the budget message and give you some highlights, and we'll see what's
Is that
next.
coming up on our screen?
No, not this, I'm just gonna do it.
No, you'll see, there'll be something in a second.
Good evening, Commissioners and Mayor. I'm just gonna go through the budget calendar that we use every year to hit all the important dates. Back in May, we did our 5-year financial plan, and we presented it to you all on May 16th on a Saturday for about 6 or 7 hours. We all got together and met. And we kind of set the tone for what we were looking at, how the budget would be presented. And we're presenting the submitted budget to you tonight for 2020. On June 15th, or prior almost, I think it was June 12th when I got these from the county clerk, the valuations that I used to calculate what kind of taxes will be generated by the mill rate. I got them from the county, and they were up, the valuation for the city was up about 3.5% compared to last year's valuation, which is probably the second strongest year I've ever seen in growth. It's due to new construction in commercial and residential properties. On July 1st, into June 1st of July, I kind of revised the revenue projections based on the first 6 months of activity for this year and historical trends. And so that's what this budget is built off of. It shows you actual 2018 numbers, revised 2019 budget numbers, and then the submitted 2020 budget numbers. And that's where we're at tonight, July 9th. Darren is submitting the budget to you all for review, and we'll meet on June 23rd, the next meeting, and we'll have to make a decision at that night, and then I will have to publish a budget hearing in the newspaper to be done at the first meeting in August, and that's when we have to officially adopt the budget. And then once it's adopted, I send that budget to the county clerk, and it gets certified and sent on to the state of Kansas Budget Division. Is there any questions on any of that timeline, or?
No,
Okay.
not from me.
I'll turn it over to Darren then if there's no other questions.
You have those charts. So what you'll see on the screen in front of you are the resources for 2020 that are planned. When I get to expenses, we'll pull up another pie chart that should show you what the expenses are, just so you have something that puts a little bit of this into reference. So the document, as we mentioned, was created with input from the commission with a focus on the Imagine Pittsburgh 2030 initiative, which includes recommendations for housing, economic development, infrastructure, public wellness, education, and communication. Additionally, we're focused on the city commission's goals of replenishing our once depleted reserves and managing our debt. And all of this work was kind of brought together with about 3 strategic planning sessions that you all participated in earlier this year. So revenues, as is the case each year, the process of building the budget begins by finding out how much money you have. The city's 2019 net assessed valuation to support the 2020 budget increased by 3.5%, as Jamie mentioned. That's a significant amount. In turn, we had an increase of 1.8% over the 2017 net assessed valuation. That's an important number because I think it's easy to get lost in the property tax. The property tax is 2 pieces. It's a mill rate that you set, and then it's the amount that each mill generates. And what we're hearing today is that the mill rate that you set is not going to go up for next year, which is always a positive for everybody that owns property in Pittsburgh. The second half of that equation is the assessed valuation. And good news, bad news situation would be if I had a house and it went up 3.5% and my property tax actually went up by that much. As Jamie's explained repeatedly, that growth in assessed valuation in this instance is actually new things in the community. And to be very clear, it's not, Jamie does a very thorough process of going through, and we have TIF districts, we have RHID districts now, we have transportation development districts, and then we quite frankly have some people that just don't pay their taxes, and we have to account for that because otherwise we're just being irresponsible by showing that we're gonna spend something that we know we're not gonna collect. All of that is backed out of that number, so Jamie's already cleaned that number. It should be the net revenues that we generate. So when you see a number like 3.5% and you look back in the last 10 or 15 years and realize it's usually 0.25% or 0.5%, then some of the things seem to be working that are going on in the community, and we thank everybody for their continued investment into their businesses and our infrastructure and our housing stock and all the people that shop here that don't live here, because that drives that sales tax figure. For 2019, sales tax collections have shown positive growth each month, and we budgeted a sales tax increase of 2%. That's conservative for Jamie, and that's in our best interest. Gaming revenues are now a regular part of our budget revenues, and Kansas Crossing Casino begins its 3rd year of operation. We had another payout, I believe, this month, and lo and behold, if you just track everything that we've collected month to month, year to year, that casino just keeps ticking up. It's not anything drastic, but it's always more than the year before for that month. And the reason you compare it month to month is, quite frankly, comparing January to July doesn't make a lot of sense in the gaming business. So when you look at that, it still is trending up, which means we don't know, quite frankly, where the baseline is. It continues to grow, but we all benefit in this community from the money that comes in, and I know I'm appreciative for the 300 people that have jobs out there.
Hey, Darren.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a question that you may not know the answer to, but is there a way in that casino revenue to parse out how many of those are Pittsburgh residents and how many people are coming from outside?
If you sit on the parking lot and count.
Yeah, license plates.
We get asked that a lot, and that's the answer that's always given to us that we pass on, which is, there's a lot of license plates in there, but who's winning what, who's losing what, we don't want to know.
Just curious.
And it's a good question. It's a popular question. The city receives 1% of the revenue from the operation of the casino, approximately $345,000 annually. That's roughly the equivalent of 3 mills of property tax, so thank goodness for that. We do deposit the gaming revenues into reserves, the result of a conservative fiscal management and additional revenue generated by the
casino allowed the city to reach our targeted reserve goals for the general fund at the end of 2018, and that's something we've been working on since I got here in the middle of 2012.
We've been working on it ever since I got here.
Well, you spent it all. We just.
Oh, no.
It's definitely important to have those reserves, and it's significant. The 2020.
Actually, we did spend it all.
After somebody may have spent some of it. The 2020 submitted budget includes no utility fee increase, as the utility reserves are at our reserves goal. That may not sound like a big deal, but I believe we've had a 1% increase for at least the last 3 years. So the commission gave that a lot of consideration. If you haven't noticed, the water tower is now painted. We were banking money for that, so we didn't have to finance it. Seems hard to believe the water tower is $750,000 to paint, but you have to paint it inside and out, and it's off the ground. So that's behind us. Shouldn't have to do that for a while, and I think everybody should acknowledge the commission for taking that 1% off this year and letting everybody just ride. On the expenses side, which is the next pie chart, hopefully it still says 55,509,080 or we're in trouble. This is a different look at it. This is how the funds are used. Basically, the general fund, as you can see, is our major operating fund, and not far behind is the public utility, and then everything else after that just kind of falls into line. A discussion of expenses begins with the cost of labor, our biggest cost for sure. 40% of our costs are for employees and their benefits, as it should be. The number of city employees in the submitted 2020 budget increased to 294.7 full-time equivalents. So there's 300 people out there working every day in some form or fashion to make sure that it's not an accident that the roads look good and the trees get trimmed, and when it rains 50 inches that things actually get mowed. I know there's always a discussion about the priorities of, there's times, quite frankly, we should have 15 people mowing the cemetery, but it's just not realistic. But we do have people that mow the cemetery. We have people that stripe our streets. We have people that put material in potholes. We have people at the front desk of City Hall. There's 300 of them, and sometimes I think police and fire get thrown in together as public safety, and we sure like them. There's a lot of administrative people over there working with them, and there's a lot of administrative people throughout the city that help the people that are actually out in the street doing the work, make sure that they're going to get paid, make sure that they're working safely, make sure that they have the materials they need. So it's a true group effort, but 300 is a big number, and I'm not sure people understand that there are 300 people working here. All of these positions are the results of community growing. This is a bigger number than it was. I think we're up 8 or 9 positions since I started 7 years ago. And that does not include the public safety positions for police that were added for the public safety sales tax. In recent years, we invested in technology to increase productivity instead of simply adding more employees, and that's worked. However, when you use this approach, you still need to add employees to support all of those systems that you've put into place. The 2020 submitted budget includes a 1% cost of living adjustment for the employees. Right now, we're kind of in what we can afford is every other year on the merits and the COLAs every year. So this is the year of the COLA. Hope the employees appreciate it. There was a few years where they didn't get anything. And when you see 3.5% growth, I know it's nice for the commission to easily give that pay raise and not think about, well, I have to balance that with increasing the property tax. It's what can happen when you have a strong economy. To offset inflation, our employees deserve this annual raise as our local economy does continue to grow, but the cost of living in this world that we live in continues to grow as well. Although the national trend for employer-provided health insurance expense continues to increase every year, usually by double digits, the 2020 submitted budget contains no increase in employer or employee contributions to the city's health insurance plan. We're very fortunate when we changed plans 5 years ago, I believe. It was arduous, and Jamie almost quit then, and we talked him into staying, but he stuck it out with us. We put together a new plan. It's got a lot of moving parts, but we had $150,000 in health reserves, and we're self-insured, so that's an important number. And currently, we have over $800,000 in those reserves, and we have not increased premiums. And that's saying a lot about the new program that we have and the commitment Jamie and his staff have made to make it happen.
I think you might just address the fact that who we were with, had been with for an extended period of time, and we were comfortable with it, and everybody thought it was the way to be. But it took leadership to step out of the box and rethink that. And so we have really come along.
Well, we had a great company.
Because of that executive decision.
Yeah, a very popular company. We had them for 51 years, and they're well-known, and they did a great job, but it's, you know, you're going to see similarities in the thing that we're going to talk about next and some other decisions that we've made. There comes a time where the city of Pittsburgh can only afford a certain level of service. And when it comes to health insurance, the one thing we all knew is if we're only going to be able to give raises every other year, how can we possibly increase premiums and keep this health insurance program balanced on the backs of the employees when they're actually losing ground? So we did some research. We were lucky. We changed the model. It's worked out for us. And it's a great point because it's really hard to do.
Yeah, it is.
The easy thing is just to be status quo, toe the line, do what we've always done. And that's nice when you can get away with it. But affordability of this community, we don't have that high of a property tax, comparatively speaking. But depending on who you are in this community, we have a very high property tax because it's relative for everyone. Mm-hmm. So when you understand that and you realize that we're not going to see 3.5% increases every year, and that it's going to take tough decisions, and that it's not fair just to say, let's drop 10 employees off the payroll this year because we can't afford it, then you need to do things like study alternate methods for health care. And in this case, Jay's going to talk about electricity. These aren't fun, easy things to do, but these are necessary things to do rather than just cutting programs and people. And so that's why they're being studied. And hats off to Jamie. And I tell him every year he's planning on retiring next year. And we're going to hide the keys to his car the night that he's supposed to go home.
But Larissa's going to be great in his place.
And Larissa's already great. But
And it takes
Jamie's
vigilance. I mean, this is a big, big deal.
Yeah, we've got great people coming up, so it is nice. But Jamie's done some really difficult things in the last 6 years, and he's always performed well, and he's always made it happen. And health insurance, going from $150,000 to $860,000, it's not an accident, and it ain't easy. So hats off to Jamie. We love Larissa. Last paragraph, and I'll shut up. Although we've been able to moderate increases throughout innovative changes and operating costs continue to rise across the board. Health insurance, work comp insurance, property and liability insurance, electricity, natural gas, vehicle fuel are all expected to increase by approximately 3%. That's a big deal when you have a $50 million budget. 3%, it adds up. Regardless of the efforts to reduce our use of electricity and look for alternate sources of power, we are forced to absorb these increases. We will continue to look for ways to manage this increasing cost while preserving our service levels, but it is difficult. The 2020 budget reflects the city's effort to address growth while controlling costs. In recent years, we've seen some amazing trends in our community. $500 million invested in this community in the last 5.5 years, creating 1,300 jobs. The increase in job growth and the decrease in unemployment have outpaced the state and the national averages. The wages are up 4%. The FICO scores are up for the highest level ever. And the middle class, everybody should listen to this, the middle class grew 11% in this community. Okay, that doesn't mean that 11% of the upper class fell to the middle class. It means that 11% of the lower class moved into the middle class. It's a big deal. Those are the things that change people's lives. And that's the things that make us drive so hard to provide the improvements that we've been able to see. And with the addition of 2 hotels, the lodging industry itself is up 25%. 25%, and we already had, I think, 6 hotels, so that's a big number. A lot of people are coming to Pittsburgh, they're eating here, they're spending their money at the boutiques, and they're strengthening this economy for all of us. The 2020 budget provides a service level which will continue to improve the quality of life on all of our residents, and I mean all of our residents. It's presented for your consideration. Obviously, we'll have a meeting in 2 weeks. We've always made ourselves available at that time for anybody from the public. The submitted budget will be on the website, but particularly for the commissioners as you dig through it and you have questions if you want to book some time to come in. I do think it's nice in the public setting for some of your questions, if not all of your questions, to get asked at the public meeting so the citizens can see an easy way. It's an easy way for them to take a look inside the budget because, quite frankly, it's just a lot of numbers after the last couple of pages of this introduction. So please take a look at it. Thanks to Jamie and the crew for pulling it together. It's a very solid document. And July 23rd, we'll jump back into it. If there's any questions, Jamie and I'd be happy to answer them.
I will post a digital version of this on the city's website tomorrow.
And I also thank Jamie and his staff and all of our staff, because everybody's involved in putting this budget together.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Every department, without exception, is involved in this. And I think it shows great concern to the constituents that everybody is involved in this. It's not just the people at the top of the jar, it's the whole group.
It's a group effort. It's a big deal. And the departments are getting real good at it. When I got here, I don't think they had a lot of input, which they probably liked. But now they're actually being asked to define service levels and come up with measures, and it's kind of going, we may survive Jamie retiring one day.
Oh, you will.
Onward and upward.
Thanks. Good job, staff.
Okay. Update. Potential municipality-owned electric utility. Deputy City Manager Jay Byers will provide an update on the potential establishment of a municipally owned electric utility. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mayor and Commissioners. Back in March, when we approved the contract, the initial contracts for the municipalization team, we talked about the fact that we need to come back to you on a regular basis, kind of give you an update as how much money we spent and what progress has happened. And so, this will be the first time I've updated you on this. So, and it occurred to me as I was doing the update that I should probably do I'll go back a little bit why, maybe back up a little bit more as to why this decision came about. So I wanted to take the opportunity to kind of go backwards a little bit and kind of rehash some of the things before we get up to the actual progress that we've made now. So I'm thinking this is going to be beneficial for everybody, so I wanted to.
I think it's beneficial to everybody who's watching out in TV land also, to reiterate this.
Yeah, TV land.
Can't hear us, but
Well, first of all, we wanted to kind of revisit just real quickly why we're even exploring the concept of public power, and it wasn't something we came to immediately. It wasn't at all something we backed into this decision. I remember when I first brought it to Darren, he's like, "No, go away." But again, when we saw that the costs were increasing, the double-digit increases that we were seeing, the unsustainable rate that we've experienced recently, and then what we projected out, really saw that there were some potential problems with all those costs, and as we talked about recently. The other thing that happened around that time is our franchise agreement expired. And that is actually a door. It was a 10-year agreement that was tacked on to a previous 10-year agreement, so it was 20 years of an agreement. So really, when these doors open up, you have to take a step back and say, is it time? Is it the right time to take a look at it? The other thing that happened, of course, is that our provider merged with another provider. The new provider will be based in Missouri, not a Kansas corporation any longer. Not that that's necessarily a problem, it just gives us a little bit of a pause. It's a much larger organization. We were a relatively small part of the previous provider, and we're even a much smaller part of the current one. So then that all of a sudden made us want to think about it as well. Of course, during this time, we really found out the impact that the rates we have here in Kansas is having on our economic development. We did notice that the rates are higher here than in our surrounding states, and that's disturbing. We're in a 4-state region here, and really having rates that are higher definitely impact us. So all of those things came together at the same time to say, okay, maybe we should move forward and at least take a look at it. So just to kind of quickly show you, these are the electricity costs for some of our surrounding states. So we don't need to dwell on this, but this is the kind of the research that we've been doing. In fact, what we have been doing is we've obviously met with our current provider numerous times. We've done a couple years worth of research into what could we do, other options. We've tried to engage the community. We created a steering committee. We had lots of meetings and talked about different options, different scenarios, different business models, and we decided, well, it's probably worth looking into a little bit more. So we engaged a consultant to help us with a feasibility study to say, we've talked about this for a couple of years now. Is it even worth considering? Let's put some numbers to this thing to see if it's even feasible. And so we found someone, and again, municipalization doesn't happen very often. But we did find somebody who had done a municipalization and then ran the municipal utility for 8 years afterwards. So as I've said, he baked his cake and then ate it. And he came in and he great deal of experience. He and his partner came in and looked at the different elements of running it. What would it create to a stand-up utility? You know, all of the different components, and they did a feasibility study. The feasibility study said we should move forward. So we decided that, well, if we are going to move forward, we're going to need to move forward with way more better experience and skills than we have. We don't have the skills to make this, to really make this decision to do the analysis. So we engaged an experienced team, and we've been and since then we've been working with Westar. We're going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing with them a little bit later. What we have learned through the feasibility study and through some of our research is that the city can buy power cheaper, right, than it's currently getting. We have a great chance to stabilize the rates and possibly even lower our electricity rates. That is certainly on the table. We did a 20-year cash flow that was positive from the first year. And we have a return on an investment of approximately 9.6%, which on an annual basis, that is well within the green area of you need to move forward with this. And just to make sure that everyone understands, and this is one thing that we're going to talk about a little bit later as well, there's no tax increase necessary. I've heard a lot of noise that there's a tax increase that's going to be required to set this up. There's going to be no tax increase required to do this. Any cost associated with this will be borne by the utility itself. These are some of the things that we need to make sure people are aware of. Okay, one of the main things we need to make sure people are aware of is that what we're talking about when we're talking about a municipal utility. There's basically three parts to any kind of electricity grid. One is the generation, one is the transmission, and then one is the distribution. All right, and they're going from left to right on this image that I'm showing you here. What we're talking about when we're talking about municipalization is just that far right corner, that distribution lines that carry the electricity to the houses. All right, that's what we're talking about. The grid, if you'll notice, the transmission lines of the tall towers. We'll probably have to buy the neighborhood transformers that step the voltage down so that the distribution lines can carry them. And you can see that on that second pole here in the green, there's a little transformer. That's the transformer that goes right to before your house. We will purchase all of those assets. All right. Note that the rest of them are not what we're talking about here. We got a phone call just this morning. All right, from and I'm gonna call her out. Her name is Martha Tompkins. She said I've lived here for 40 years. All right, and she didn't see how we could possibly afford to build a power plant. It's not how we couldn't possibly do that. It'd be way too expensive. And it really made us realize that and I'll talk about this later, that we need to do a better job of communicating. The word hasn't gotten out there. So Darren and I explained to her, well, we're not buying that. We're just buying the distribution grid. We can buy power, elsewhere. And once we explained to her what it was, she's like, oh, well, I guess that makes sense. I mean, so just that.
What made sense to her was it wouldn't be more expensive.
Well, yeah, that was the other thing we told her, right?
And the lights will be on.
Well, that's absolutely, and the lights will continue to be on. One of the questions, though, that I think we do answer on a regular basis is if we don't get our electricity from Westar, where do we get it from? Where can we get it from? And what we can get it from is anywhere on the grid. The electricity markets are open. We can buy electricity on the open market. All right. What I'm showing you here, this is actually a picture of the Southwest Power Pool. The Southwest Power Pool is something called, it's a regional transmission organization, all right? It's overseen by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And what it does, what it's responsible for, is balancing out the electricity through this whole area here. Westar's area is the area in yellow there. And we're within that yellow Westar area right now. And so what the Southwest Power Pool does is it balances the electricity, and you can buy electricity on that grid anywhere, but it makes sure that there's no surges throughout that whole grid there. So just to give you an understanding, there's multiple regional transmission organizations all around the country. We can buy our electricity from any of them. We could buy our electricity from California if we wanted to, all right? So there's obviously you have to pay the transmission fees for all that, but those are the things that we can do. We can buy it from just about anywhere, from just about any source. By the way, if you have any questions, please.
Yeah, I have one. When you're talking about buying this power from anywhere, and I've asked for both the pros and cons of us doing this, and I never have the cons. It's all the pros. So I've looked things up on the internet. Some cities that have done this for a few years, and what I've seen with some of the ones that did this, they couldn't afford it any longer. And you talked about buying power anywhere. But one of the things that they couldn't afford to do any longer, why they wanted to go back the way it was, is when you buy power, you just don't buy it for a month at a time, you buy it for a long-term commitment. Some of the ones I researched are 20-year commitments. And in the time that they bought power cheaper, then power was produced cheaper elsewhere. But they were locked into this long-term commitment and couldn't get out of. So there's a lot of stuff that I'd like to have that kind of information from other cities that have done this and what some of the pitfalls of what they've had over there. So I'd appreciate you researching that and also provide that information. So when it comes down to the point that we might decide to do this, we have all the information, and I think that'd be good for the citizens, because surely they will be able to be the ones that vote on this. And I've asked that every time. I asked that the last time I think this came up, I asked the city attorney about this, and it concerned me because all along when I've asked this question, I was assured that the citizen could get the vote on this. But Henry explained, depending on how it is funded, it might not be put to the vote of the people. So,
Chuck, that's our decision.
That's our decision. If you let me finish.
All right, sorry.
So, I just want to make it sure that we are given all the information. And I know, Dawn, you said that's our decision, but I once again stand by the fact that that decision should be made by the citizens, not from the commission that are in office for a temporary position for a temporary number of years. So and we don't have to discuss it.
No, but if you have researched and you know some communities that you've had a negative experience, I would encourage you to give.
And I brought that up, Dawn.
But I would
have brought that up.
I would encourage you to give those cities.
Vero Beach, Florida, Georgetown, Texas.
I would just email them.
No, I think this knowledge should be out there for all our citizens, can look that up for themselves.
Okay. So what
So let me respond.
I think you should go on with Jay.
Sure, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, let me get in on that real quick, because I think it's important, because, Chuck wants to share information. So Florida and New Jersey or whatever one, that's great.
Georgetown,
Texas. So we're in Kansas. There's 622 cities in Kansas, 125 of them have public power. There's actually some that are nearly our size, and there's one, if you research, and it's called Garden City, that's very similar to us. It went through the exact example that you described. They had a 20-year contract for power, and they spent 2 years fighting with the legislature, trying to get out of their agreement for power, because 20 years is too long. If you have, as Commissioner brought up, if you buy anything at a 20-year price, what do you think is going to happen over 20 years? It may look cheap all of a sudden, but over time, you're going to be locked in. And they fought it, and they're a public power, just like we would be. And what they found was, I believe the number was $8 or $9 million a year. But when they broke out of that 20-year contract, that's how much they saved in their community on the cost of power. And the reason that's important is because we are currently at the mercy of a company that has those long-term, very expensive commitments to producing power a certain way. And it takes away their flexibility, let alone our flexibility, to go into these shorter-term markets. And the markets aren't 20 years anymore. You can buy power for 20 years if you want to. You can also buy it for 15 minutes. So things have changed, and the commissioner brings up a good point. But look around Kansas. You can look around the country if you want, but there's plenty of cities in Kansas that are on both sides of this. And study it. Look at the ones that have public power. Look at the things that they do. Look at the decisions they make. And I think it's time that everybody quit listening to us and quit listening to you and got educated. This is English, and we don't need to hear Chuck say that we all need to continue to get out and pray that we're going to vote on this. The commission's going to make that decision in time. What we're doing right now is we're in a very important educational period, and we don't want to get too far down the road. We've had this conversation 2 months ago. We are at a place in time where we're studying it, and this is a very important piece of information, and today is to educate you on what you can do to learn about this decision. We will come back when we have all of the answers and let the commission decide how they want to handle it.
Well,
But
Darren,
there
I wanna
are
thank you.
communities in Kansas that are doing this right now, so please call them up, go to their website, and go check it out, because quite frankly, those are the communities we're modeling our behavior after, and the goal of achieving something that they currently have. It's something that seems to work, it's in our state, it's in our region, and it's supported by these facts that Jay's providing you.
Well, I want to thank you
Keep
for
it
that
open mind.
information, because I hadn't heard that ever
bet.
before with that city in Kansas. And it brings me to the next question. If that was the case, why did we go to Winter Park, Florida, why didn't we go to somewhere in Kansas so we got that information? Then you can move on, so.
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay. Well, one thing that is certainly clear, though, is that the whole electricity markets, electricity technology, all is changing very dramatically, very quickly right now. And we have learned quite a bit from some of the failures that have happened. And almost all of them have happened, they're unique. Every situation that we've come across, whether it's been successful or not successful, is unique. There's been certain conditions that they've faced that they've had to deal with, right? And so we've learned from all those things. And we're really, I think, at the point where we have the luxury of taking advantage of some of the changes that are happening in the markets and in the technology to be able to make this change, knowing all of the good and bad sides. So we look forward to moving forward with that. If we do it, by the way, we are moving forward with what's known as a public power utility, and we're moving away from an investor-owned utility. All right, and the difference there is it's really just a different business model. All right, in an investor-owned utility, it's for-profit, shareholder-owned. It's responsible to the regulatory body, the Kansas Corporation Commission, and it's run by a private board of directors. Right? That's what it's profit-driven. That's the way it's made. It's served. And investor-owned utilities are huge and serve a lot of customers all over the country. All right. And public power utility obviously is a not-for-profit. It's owned by the community. All right. It is not. It would not be regulated by the Kansas Corporation Commission, and it's governed by an elected body or an appointed board. Right. So there's a fundamental business difference here, right, in the two. And I just think it's clear, it's important to show that how the electricity is going to be managed is going to be very similar, right? But the business behind it is going to be very different.
So essentially, the people of Pittsburgh would own this utility.
That is correct.
It would belong to our community, be an asset in our community, to the people in our community.
Yes, and they would be, and their elected or appointed representatives would make the overall decision. Right. Just some real quick statistics to let you know that public power is not uncommon at all. The 49 million people are served by public power across the country. 60% of all the electric utilities are public power utilities. They don't serve the largest group of people, but they're in number, they are the largest number of utilities, of public power utilities. And there's already 118 Kansas communities. He keeps saying no 125. It's 118. Yeah, 118 in Kansas. So, but 118 Kansas communities in this state are already powered by public power. And in case, what we're really concerned with here, and what everybody should be concerned with here, is what is the cost? Are we going to be facing any additional costs? Public power typically costs less. All right. These are just the average costs per residential customers. All right. For investor-owned utilities and public power utilities. So just to let you know, just in general, this is not 100% of the times, all right? But in general, on an average, public power utilities costs are less expensive. I'm going to get a little technical here, all right? So because there's some definitions here I need to talk a little bit about, because I'm going to talk about what we've been working on, and what we've been working on is some pretty technical things, right? Two definitions in particular that we need to talk about. We need to talk about severance and reintegration, all right, and power purchase agreements, which Chuck was talking about, all right. Severance and reintegration is that process of reconfiguring the power lines, all right, so that city customers can be separated from customers who are going to be served by the incumbent utility, by Westar, right? So we're going to have to make that decision about, okay, this person's going to be served by Pittsburgh if we do a public power utility. This person's going to be served by Pittsburgh Power. This one's going to be served by Westar. And how that happens is a technical discussion, a technical issue. And we're going to spend a lot of time doing that. It's one of the reasons we hired the team that we have, all right? And the key here is to do it in a way that's seamless, that doesn't disrupt the electricity supply to either side. And there's going to be a lot of time and effort spent on severance and reintegration. Right? Now, power purchase agreement is very simply, as I think you alluded to, is a contract between two parties, one that generates the electricity and one that uses and consumes the electricity. Right? Now, the thing about power purchase agreements are, there are long-term agreements. There's a spot market that you can work through a broker on and buy electricity on. I think it even said 5-minute intervals. I can't imagine why you would buy electricity on 5-minute intervals, but you could theoretically. It kind of makes sense where you might want to change your power supply from the heat of the day in the middle of July or something. You may want to change it. So, but the power purchase agreements can take a lot of different forms, and it's likely as we talk about power purchase agreements, and we have done some of that work. We probably have more than one. We'll probably have a longer term one that guarantees us some power, right? But it's unlikely to be 20 years. The future generations would shoot me if I got into a 20-year agreement. But it would be a longer term one, 5, maybe 10 years, all right? And then and just to guarantee that this power supply is always available. But there'll be some clauses in there that allows us to buy on the spot market as well, so we can take advantage of lower cost electricity. There's also agreements that we would want to make about the source of the electricity. Do we want it to be from green sources? Do we want it to be from the cheapest sources? Do we prefer natural gas? Depends. We can buy power from any source. And in those power purchase agreements will be the details of how we acquire that power. Right? And there'll likely be more than one agreement. Likely to give us, and these get pretty complicated, all right, when you start negotiating these agreements. And there's going to be a lot of time to be able to negotiate that. It's going to take some time. That'll be one of the main things we work on next.
And Jay, we can also generate our own power as much as we want and put that onto our own grid, which we can't do now. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Or at least it's disincentivized to
I
do
wasn't
that.
going there. But yes, we can.
Sustainability people right here.
Long term, I mean, when we look at the different scenarios, it is likely that some level of generation is going to be beneficial to us, all right? Short term, we're not going to do any, we're not going to build any generation capacity. Right, even if only to shave the peak usage periods, right? We would probably want to have our own generation. Now, I can talk about this for a long time, so I don't want to bore you, but the direction that things are going in is a combination of solar and storage is really a hard to beat combination. So when we talk about generation, it's unlikely to be, it's not going to be a big coal plant, all right? It'll be something like solar fields.
Jay, who would make that decision?
The board, this body right here would make that decision, along with the board that's appointed to manage the public utility. Right? So, and that would be a city's decision. And that would also, the decision to how we would interact with individual solar on their homes would also be our decision, all right? Which is not really feasible at this point. Right? So anyway, I wanted to get those definitions clear before I started talking about the actual progress that we're making on the team. We started in April with our first term. We approved the first two contracts for legal and engineering work in March, and then we had our first team meeting in April. Then we sat down and walked through all the data needs that we're going to have. What data do we need to have to make that decision about whether or not this is going to be the right thing to do? All right. We also defined the process we're going to have to go through. There's a regulatory process we're going to have to go through, steps and legal that we have to go through. We also had our initial meeting with Westar, which is a big first step for us. We spent some time preparing for it and deciding how we were going to manage it. They came here, they sat in this room. And we had our first meeting with them where we formally told them we were thinking about doing this, and then tried to engage and attempted to engage them in a negotiated dialogue, and they were very, very receptive, very, very cordial meeting we had, which led into May, all right, where we started having meetings with Westar. They agreed to help us collect the data that we needed. We had a lot of meetings with them to collect the data, kind of define it and explain it. They asked us to execute an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement. They didn't want us to share a lot of the details of the negotiations we're having, so we're a little bit constrained about what we can talk about in terms of what happened. But we are getting into some pretty deep information about data that we need to be able to present to you to decide whether or not this is a good idea to move forward with. We did also realize that we're going to need some experts in setting up an valuation and municipal utility valuation. Baker Tilly was also a contract that we finalized in May. They're going to represent us in that area, as well as some rate analysis and other things down the road. We spent a lot of time on the legal side, and I say we, I mean the experts in this spent time analyzing state and federal regulations. This is more legal type work. And then we really kind of dug into a little bit of operational requirements. What is it going to take to actually run a utility of this nature? Spent a lot of time in May doing that. Finally, in June, we arranged for and prepared and then attended a meeting with the Kansas Corporation Commission staff. Our lawyer recommended that it would be a good idea for us to talk with them, kind of let them know what we're doing. I think he said, make sure that they don't think you're wild-eyed socialists. I think that's what he said. And we prepared a presentation for them. We asked them to figure out what information they would need to know and what kind of questions, and to try to anticipate some of the questions they had. We took our team with us to Topeka and met with them in their offices. They had quite a few people in the room with us, and some people also from CURB was there, the Citizens Utilities Ratepayers Board. They kind of represent citizens' interests in these things. Again, their interest is in making sure that we're going about it in a way that's not going to hurt the citizens of Pittsburgh. So CURB was there, KCC staff was there, and they asked us a bunch of questions, and fortunately we had our team with us that could answer most of those questions. They got a little detailed in a few things, but they seemed satisfied. They said that they appreciated the fact that we're going about this slowly and deliberately and using qualified people to assist us. They expressed that. I think everything went really well with them, and there was some question as to what their ultimate role would be in this, and I think the legal opinions are going to decide what the Kansas Corporation Commission's role will be with that. In June, of course, we're continuing to work with Westar on data collection. They're being very helpful with us. Our team is meeting with them, calling with them. We gave them a green light to go ahead and talk with the Westar directly, and they're doing that. And Westar's been forthcoming with the information we need, and it's been very helpful. In fact, we're almost done collecting the information. That first round of information that we need for our team to go back and start doing the analysis that they do. In fact, they even started analyzing based on some of the information they've already had. We also obviously have to really start digging into that severance and reintegration options. When it comes right down to it, we're going to look at actual substations and who's going to own what part of each sub. I mean, it's going to get down to the individual component piece. I mean, each little piece of the grid is going to be divvied up if we do this, and that's going to take a long time to decide. And Westar has to be comfortable with that, and the process that's going to take. And they've been working with us on that. We are waiting for them to provide us with their evaluation, but that is supposedly coming.
I have a question, just to clarify. That non-disclosure disorder, you said Westar requested that we sign that? And
They
we
did.
complied. Okay, so the reason that there's not been, a lot of information recently, I know people ask me all the time, what's the update, what's the update? I'm like, I don't know. It's because we complied with their request to sign that order, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And vice versa.
But we all signed it. We all signed
We're
it.
not hiding information, is I guess, right, we're,
No.
I mean, technically, yes, but.
No.
The easiest way to think about it
Legally.
is if you're trying to buy a house, the last thing you want is the person that's selling you the house to know how much money you have.
Right.
And what you're willing to pay. Otherwise, what's the point? So, they understand that, and we understand, and there will be a time where that doesn't matter, and everybody's gonna have to show their cards, but it's not in the first 2 months of sharing data and showing where you're at.
Finally, in June, we talked about, we planned a, power purchase agreement. We're going to talk about our approach to purchasing power. That's going to be a process. We have to find out how do we want to structure the agreements, who are the providers that can provide us the power that we like, that in the way we need and think it's best for the citizens. That's going to be a process. So we started that in June. We haven't anywhere finished that. To date, we've spent $57,405.09. Right. Jamie has established a separate account where he's tracking all of the expenditures related to this electricity process. Right. And by the way, given it seems like a lot of money to spend over a 3-month period, but in all honesty, I mean, based on who we're using and the quality and the national level expertise we're directing at this, we're being as frugal as we can be with those funds.
And having the lawyer and the teams is gonna keep us out of something like a 20-year, they're gonna work for our benefit in these agreements so that we're not stuck with something that isn't sustainable.
Yeah, that's obviously the goal. The whole team, almost everyone on the team has experience in negotiating these public power agreements, so it'll be a team discussion, all right? We're not going to rely on any one person to tell us what we should do. We're going to do our own research, and we're going to use the team as a whole to make those kind of decisions. A power purchase agreement is incredibly important because it's 60% of your overall cost of your utility is the power that you use. So it is a very big decision. And we're going to have a long-term discussion about that within ourselves, within the team itself, and then of course with you when that time comes.
As far as I'm concerned, $57,000 is not much money when you're talking about making a purchase of this magnitude.
At this point, I mean, it's again, there's going to be we're doing some very serious analysis now, so there's still work being done. We'll come back to you in a couple months and tell you, here's how much we spent up. Sometime probably in September, I'll come back to you and say, okay, here's what we spent up to this point, just to let you know where we are, what progress we've made, and what's going on.
And to reassure you, Jay, I think we were in here 2 or 3 months ago and we talked about initially rolling this out and that project management was going to be a big part of it, and we alluded to Jay's experience. Every time we have a certain meeting with the whole team, it costs X, and we make sure, we have those planned every week. We don't have those all the time. I mean, this thing is being actively managed to keep the cost down. We understand, while $57,000 isn't, an enormous amount of money, it's $57,000, and doing this with it is instead of doing something else with it. So it's very important that we do this, but it's also critical that people understand if we don't pay for those services, we'll never get through this information. The contacts alone and the ability to sit at a table and have an hour meeting and walk out of there and not feel like, well, now we've got 3 months to sift through this and figure out if we're being played or if they're being played. I mean, the expertise in this is critical, and it will save us money in the long term. So, but it is being managed very hard, and I appreciate your efforts.
I do want to talk briefly about the next steps. We will eventually get Westar's what they consider the value of the grid to be, all right? And our experts, who by the way, Baker Tilly sets the bar for utility valuation, one of the reasons we chose them, all right? They will be analyzing their valuation calculation very closely. Jerry and probably another engineer will be working very specifically on the severance and reintegration approach with Westar. They're going to have to make some decisions about that. And what's the best for both parties. We're going to, as I said, we're going to define and start the power purchase agreement process, which is going to be a long tail on that. We will sit down and negotiate the final negotiations, sit down hardcore negotiations of the acquisition, severance, and reintegration with Westar, where we're going to make some final decisions about the value of the grid and the severance and reintegration details. Right. We will have a power purchase agreement offer on the table, so we'll know how much that's going to be, and those are the pieces we need to know if this is going to work, if this is going to be the right thing for us. Right? We will have a complete picture at that point, of course, along with the operational costs and maintenance, things like that. We'll have a complete picture of what it's going to cost to do this, and that will be a decision point for the commission to consider, which we will certainly present to you.
And input on, to Commissioner Munsell's point, input on that, maybe you like 20 and Jay likes 10 minutes or whatever. Everybody will get to have that versus just inheriting whatever you're told, hey, it's going to be this and here's your rate. You'll get to say, hey, I think it ought to be 9 months or whatever. that's kind of the whole concept of locally controlling this, is making decisions to have it reflect what you want to see in the utility versus just, you know, hey, like, the lights are on and that's good enough and let's pay whatever. And, you know, we do think there's some value to you, you know, the commissioners or whoever's deciding this to think, you know, what's right for us? And you can't do that right now. And it probably is costing us money in the short term and definitely in the long term.
Well, and may be on the cutting edge of looking at our own power, but we're certainly not on the cutting edge of electric rates because Kansas there's Senate Bill 69 that authorized the KCC to start looking at rates because we're so high, and I'm sure that's, you know, part of their strategy for economic growth is to get those costs down. I do have a question. Are you solely working with Westar or are KCP&L involved at all?
Oh, well, they're a merged company. They asked us to refer to them as Westar in public meetings, and we will continue to do that. But we're definitely working with both sides.
Okay.
It's truly one company now.
It is one company.
But they want to be called Westar.
I mean, they're going through their issues internally, but we're working people from both sides.
I know it may be really difficult to do this, Jay, but on this next step, any kind of timeline on any of these things, or?
That's not, Dan, I need to.
I know it's a difficult thing to do, but I think maybe people out there will kind of know ballpark what we might be looking at here.
I think we'll be able to come to you in the first quarter of next year with again, it's a ballpark, all right, first quarter of next year with what we consider to be numbers that we're comfortable with to determine whether or not we should move forward. I mean, my consultants may be cringing if they're watching this right now, but that's, I think we will certainly be talking to you on a regular basis to let you know where we are. And I have put various timelines together from, again, project manager experience here, but I can't tell you because we don't know. This fourth bullet down here where we negotiate acquisition and severance and reintegration with Westar, that's the big unknown. I don't know how long that's going to take. And that could easily take into next year, all right, pretty well into next year, particularly if we are unable to come to terms and we have to go through the statutory process. All right. So.
I mean, I think it's safe to say, or at least I'll speak for myself, you know, there in no way, shape, or form do we have enough information to make a decision whether we go forward, whether it's to the vote or not. So, you know, if there's I guess, rumbles out there that the commission's already made a decision, that is simply not true.
And I'll second that also. You know, these other decisions are a long way down the line, as far as I'm concerned. This is just like when you're preparing for a test. You know, you're studying the information. That is the phase that we're in at this point. We're studying. And later on, we take the test.
And unfortunately, to get the information we need, we have to have these experts. We simply don't have the expertise in-house to be able to do that. But that misperception you're talking about that we hear leads me to, I'm going to ask for something, all right? And what I'm going to ask for is the need for communication here. Darren and I, we've had a steering committee, we've set up web pages, we have regular communications with the city commission, of course. We've met with over 200 people. Darren and I have just in the throughout the community, and there's still a great deal of confusion out there. All right, this is, as I'm sure you gleaned at this point, this is not an easy decision, right? And it's something I think we need to get more information out to the public. When I came to you originally, when we talked about what this is going to take, we talked about it's going to need engineering work, it's going to need accounting work, it's going to need technical work, and legal work, all right? I did not ask you to include communications work, and it's become, because Darren and I thought we would be able to do that. We would, and you know, obviously we have some communication tools at our disposal, but we clearly don't have enough. There's so much misinformation out there, and what I'm asking you right today is to allow me to include, along with the legal and technical and financial work, to include some communication as part of the expense that we're going to be incurring through this municipalization process. Once again, I don't, you know, I just want you to say that it's okay for us to use some money for communication. Again, we're talking about educational materials, as it says up here. We need to, people don't really understand electricity markets, all right? And how municipalities could fit into those with the electric grid. They don't understand how municipal electric utility would be operated. They don't understand how utilities operated in general, and how a municipal utility would be different.
Well, I would say, I try to talk about this to everyone I can, possibly to the annoyance of people who've heard me talk about it a lot. But anybody out there, I am more than happy to come and talk to you personally, your group, about what I know. I don't know as much as other people at the city, but maybe I'm more fun to listen to, I don't know. But yes, I would love to talk to anybody who wants to talk to me about this, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, Jay, about using some of the already approved funds to pay for communication, but I would like to see it in writing.
Yeah, a proposal.
Okay,
Yeah.
we could do that.
Cost proposal.
Sure.
Yeah.
I also agree that it behooves us to get more information out to our constituents so that we clear up any confusion. Not that it'll be 100% cleared up, I'm sure, but we need to strive towards that.
What we're finding is that the need for a persistent level of communication, ongoing, really is really out there, because, you know, obviously rumors start, things happen, but we need to make sure that people understand what we're doing and why, and how it's going to affect them. You know, that's what we want to do. So we'll bring you back a specific.
I agree with that too. I think you gotta remain 100% transparent with what we're doing. And so I would agree with this information that you're planning on.
We'll bring you back a formal proposal.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, now.
Is that it?
Yeah, sorry, that's it. Oh my God, I didn't like how he said that. That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, that is it?
That's it? You have questions?
I thought we were just about to get to the good stuff. So that's the update, we're just still.
Yeah.
What are you looking for, Sarah?
I know, I thought.
Sorry.
Thanks, Jay.
Sorry to disappoint you.
I think the main update that you're looking for, why you feel like you just ate a sundae and you're not full.
I'm full.
There's a lot to the number that Westar is going to come back with. That's going to drive it. I mean, if we're miles apart, then the negotiation is going to be a much different animal. If we're right here and we're talking about this versus that, but right now they have come to the table. I've been impressed with them. There's 10 big baskets of information we've been working on. 8 of them I think are knocked out.
Yeah.
There's 2 big ones left, and you know, I think they sent something out to the public basically saying, you know, they were willing to walk through this process with us. They thought it was important. They obviously want to continue to serve Pittsburgh. Of course they do. They're an investor-owned utility, and that's what they do. And so I think right now it's going pretty well. But I mean, it could take 3 months, and it could take till next February.
I
But
think
you'll know it when it happens, and hopefully it'll go quicker than.
our team, the consultants we've worked with, I think the word they've used was astonished at how well they're working with Westar and how much, because that isn't their experience in the past.
Because it's nothing personal, right? We're not, I mean, it's
It's a
just.
business decision.
Yeah, it's a business decision.
Well, and we're such a small, insignificant part of their customer base. It's just, you know, if they can get rid of us, they're probably glad. Okay, thank you, sir. Consider the following. Debt and mortgage subordination agreement. Consider entering into a debt and mortgage subordination agreement between the city, Arvest Bank, and P&L Development LLC, placing the city in second position to Arvest Bank for the repayment of funding by P&L Development LLC in regard to the Silverback Landing project. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You pretty well said it all right there. This is a subordination agreement on the P&L development loan that was approved by the City Commission in August of last year. This was requested by Arvest Bank. That really just solidifies that the city has a second position behind Arvest Bank, and that's traditionally the position that we take with economic development projects like this, where there is a bank involved. But Arvest asked Henry to draw up this agreement that really puts that in writing and solidifies the city's second position.
How much money are we talking about?
$450,000 is the loan.
Can you say
That's
that?
Mr. Mayor, that's the city's portion. Arvest is 1.4 million.
But this is an agreement we've already made.
Yes, sir. Yes. I'm sorry.
So, no, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, can you say that in just a little bit more layman's terms, what exactly that means?
Well, essentially, we have two creditors. We have Arvest, we have the city, both lending money for this project. So obviously, when you file the documents, you can't have two number ones. You have to have a clear who's in first position, who's in second position. If there could be somebody else, not to my knowledge, but there could be somebody else involved, we want to make sure that we secure that second position to basically protect the city's interests.
So if this goes belly up, this is just saying we get our money back after our vest?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We're talking about the 450.
Correct. Yes, sir. 450,000.
They have to pay Arvest back the 1.4 first, and
Yes,
then
sir.
we're, okay. Go.
So this is just to protect the city.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions?
Move to approve.
I second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, sir. Resolution number 1223. Consider approval of resolution number 1223, accepting up to $100,000 from Live Well Crawford County to be utilized by the city of Pittsburgh for connectivity of the Community Health Center.
I want to ask Brad Stroud to come up. He wanted to speak a little bit about the grant funds that we're looking to utilize as part of this.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Brad Stroud. I'm an executive director of Live Well Crawford County. Live Well is a health and wellness coalition here in Crawford County. Simply put, our focus is to simply help our citizens improve their health. Live Well coordinates a grant for Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas called the Pathways to a Healthy Kansas grant. The main objectives for the Pathways grant is to improve and promote healthier lifestyles through healthy eating, active living, and tobacco cessation in several pathways, including restaurants, retail grocers, healthcare providers, schools, work sites, the well-being of residents, and finally, community policy. Our coordination of this grant has seen grant funds awarded to 6 of our schools, 4 restaurants, 3 retail grocers, 2 healthcare providers, 9 work sites, as well as $50,000 going towards projects benefiting our residents. In all, if Resolution 1223 is approved, it will have awarded approximately $350,000 in grant funding to our county. Resolution 1223, if passed by the council, would accomplish Live Well's work in our community policy pathway and will qualify us to receive $100,000 towards implementation of the Sidewalk Feasibility Study North Medical District Plan. The funds, once received, would be turned over to the management of the City of Pittsburgh for this project. The $100,000 does not require any matching dollars. However, the $100,000 can be matching dollars for additional future grants which the city and/or Live Well can apply for additional funding toward the project. At this time, I can try to answer any questions regarding the grant.
I have a question. When I read through this resolution, it keeps talking about sidewalk feasibility, and the word I am confused about is study. This is not to construct a sidewalk. This is $100,000 to study the sidewalk?
No, that, what it's tied to is to address the area that was, Olson was the engineer that performed the study, and is to do the work within that area that was underneath the study. It basically went from Atkinson down to 23rd Street and from Joplin over to Michigan. Looking at connecting the North Medical District campus in and to itself, as well as out to the surrounding community there. So it's referring to the sidewalks that were studied as part of that feasibility study.
So this is actually going to build sidewalks, it's not
Correct.
going to study?
Right, we'd already had a previous grant that paid for the study, and this is
Got it.
now the action item to get the construction done.
Got it.
And this was,
Same question.
this was one of the top 5 priorities of the Active Transportation Advisory, our Citizen Advisory Board, that brought to us the addition of these sidewalks in that complex. So, thanks Brad for bringing this to us, and
I have a
thanks for your
question.
patience.
Yeah, my family was in from Florida over the 4th of July holiday, and they took a walk from where I live north, and that was a big complaint of my daughter-in-law. There's no sidewalks. So my question is, with this grant, if we approve this, which hopefully we will there be sidewalks by next 4th of July?
But could you, I think you're gonna have to go to Florida. Could you give the street, the boundary?
Again, you're looking at Atkinson down to 23rd and between Joplin and Michigan. So you're looking around the North Medical District Complex area there. Again, probably the first focus they're looking at building the new mental health facility there. So we don't have exactly where we're looking at to do today. We don't know what their footprint's going to be with that facility. We don't know what plans they are to interconnect their facilities and the rest of that campus as part of that project yet. So, as I told Brad, what I'd like to do is, rather than build a bridge to a swamp, or basically take someone, bring them from Joplin over and dump them out into a gravel sidewalk, or go walk, you have to get up to Atkinson,
Gravel right away.
you know, good luck going cross country or trying to dodge traffic going up that narrower roadway. Look at trying to make that interconnectivity in there, so once you get to that site, you can get around easily, and then look to make those connections. And that's all part of that study, is running all the way from Joplin, all the way from Atkinson down to 23rd where there's existing sidewalk. Looked at Michigan, once you get down past 31st, that drainage way there is rather steep, and really you'd be paying a whole lot of money to try and get a little bit of benefit there. So their recommendation is not look at anything south of 31st along Michigan at this time. And if there's a larger road project that involves storm sewer and kind of helps make that area more accessible for a sidewalk to be constructed, to do it at that time. And also looked at multiple ways, east and west, to try and connect to the Michigan side over to Joplin.
Where does Livewell Crawford County get this $100,000?
$100,000 comes from Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas.
Oh, that's right, I read that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah, I read that.
Now, they left already, but maybe those ladies will have a nice sidewalk to walk their dog on now.
Yes.
Any other questions regarding this?
Move to approve.
I second it.
Been moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you, Livewell, for bringing this to the city. It's much appreciated, much needed.
Appointments to Sustainability Advisory Committee.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Consider staff request to appoint 2 individuals to fill unexpired terms as member of the Sustainability Advisory Committee, effective immediately and to conclude on December the 31st, 2020. Short term.
2020.
Oh, 20.
Yeah, isn't it?
Oh, that's right, 2020, yeah, that's not too bad.
Just real
Okay,
quickly,
do we want to hear from these folks that are here?
I think so. Just a little bit of background. We just had a couple people who have been unable to fulfill their terms for various reasons. We wanted to do them together. Anyway, just wanted to let you know that there's no problems here.
Okay, good. Yes,
Well, I'm one of those people.
now step forward, tell us your name.
Okay, I've been waiting.
Even on the front row.
So, I have a little speech here. I'll try not to keep you all very long. But I'm here because Sarah asked me to come.
Name?
And give you my name. So, my name is Nancy Scott. And just quickly, I'm very interested in serving on this Sustainability Advisory Committee. Just quick, and I'll make it quick. I grew up in Pittsburgh, left to go to KU, 69, so that was a while ago. Was gone 20 years, and now I've been back 30 years. So I've raised 3 children here. I'm married to Michael Brewer, And now I'm a retired physical therapist from Mercy over in Joplin. I am dedicated all my life to living responsibly and sensitive to what I call the ecological balance. I know I'm giving a personal here, but this is how you can know me. Here are some examples of how I live my life personally. I do walk daily, walking my dog in my neighborhood. I'm in the George Nettles area, and my husband and I do care about our neighborhood. We pick up trash almost every day. We pre-cycle at the grocery store. We don't buy things that are going to go into our trash. We're very sensitive about that. We use reusable bags. We support our recycling center. We're thrilled that it's here. In 2018, I became a master gardener, and I'm so proud because I helped the 5th grade STEM group at George Nettles plant 300 pansies.
Oh, wow.
So I hope you all got to see those. They were very proud of those flowers. As a member of Pittsburgh Beautiful, I plant, weed, pick up trash, and I am the one who takes the pictures of the Pittsburgh Beautiful homes and businesses that you see in the paper. I have received some sustainable camping awards from Leave No Trace in Colorado. I've received 3 different awards. I'm very proud of those. And last year, for those of you who attend Olive Street concerts, I was the sustainability chair for our camping. We had 30 people, and we had very, very minimal trash thanks to the efforts that we took as a group. So I am very mindful of my carbon footprint, and I think I can bring that to the committee, and I'm anxious to serve for the community. So
Thank you, Nancy.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
I have questions about the electric thing, or is that?
No, that's later.
Okay, I've never been to one. Hold on.
Hi, my name is Jason Davis. I live at 2021 South Elm. And I didn't prepare a speech, unfortunately, but I am also very eager to serve in the community. I'm actually not from around here. I'm from the northeast Kansas area, around Topeka in there. And I have some leadership experience from clubs at Pittsburgh State University. I am currently a student. I intend to graduate in December with a bachelor's in communications. And so I consider that to be one of my strong suits, also problem solving. I've been thinking about creative ways to improve the community, both for the environment that surrounds us, but also for the personal growth of each and every person within that community, because personally that's very important to me, is that everyone has not only opportunity but incentive to grow for themselves and for the people around them. And also, as I've heard multiple times in this meeting, economic growth. I think that all 3 of those things should be very much intertwined, and I have an invested interest in expediting that. I consider myself to be a catalyst for change, and so I want to be a part of that through the Sustainability Committee, so I hope you guys consider that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Andrew Willett. Live at 215 East 14th Street. I didn't prepare anything either. I just got the email saying it was my best interest to show up tonight. Currently, right now, I'm a biological instructor for Neosho County Community College, so I've been doing that for about the past 8 years. I was fortunate enough to be a participant in the Pittsburgh Citizens Police Academy this last spring. I really enjoyed that, really opened my eyes to what the city does and what our law enforcement provides for the community. And so when I saw this pop up, I thought I'd give it a shot, that this might be a way for me to go ahead and give back to the community in that sense. I've only been living in Pittsburgh for a year, but I feel that it's important to be active in the community. I like the idea of it's important, it's almost as important as how you do something as to why you do something. And so I'm a really big believer in that. And also, I like the term advisory. So as an advisory committee, I've got lots of experience with committees over the years. And being on an advisory committee, you let me know what you're interested in. I've got my own ideas as well, but the point of an advisory committee, I feel so much is the way that it's set up right now is just to give you the information so that you can make those decisions that you're really counting on. And so I guess that's about it. It'd be a pleasure to serve if you choose me. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Anyone else?
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor. My name is Tim Bell. I live at 310 Webster. Been a resident for about 40 years. I haven't prepared anything, but I would appreciate, the opportunity to serve on the Sustainability Advisory Committee. I feel like with some of my experiences that I could, maybe contribute to that board in some positive manner. So I'm going to keep this pretty brief. So that's about all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next. Seeing no one else, I guess it's our turn to vote.
You know, in a lot of ways, these are some of the hardest decisions that we make because all of you guys sound great, but we can only pick two. Yeah, and so I just, as I always say with this, I want to encourage even, if we have to pick two, so the other two, I really get involved because the boards themselves can't do the things that they need to do alone. They need volunteers, and then when the next round of board comes up, people will volunteer and then be on the board. So please stay involved.
Look at my answers.
Cheat on your test.
Huh? Okay.
Before we get into it.
It's hard to say that without going out of the mic.
Just don't do it right.
Thanks, Patrick.
And the drum roll.
There's Saffron.
The drum roll is Nancy Scott and Andrew Ouellette. Thank you. Received the most votes, so you want to.
Well, welcome.
Congratulations.
We need a motion. We still need a motion and a vote.
Oh, we need a motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve.
Nancy and Andrew?
I make a motion to approve Nancy and Andrew.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Welcome. Thank you all for serving.
Thank you. First meeting's tomorrow night, right?
Okay, and we're gonna break for a short break. 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
The clock's ticking.
As well.
Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. Non-agenda, reports and requests. Bi-monthly budget review. Jamie.
Good evening again. I'm here to give you a review of the 2019 budget as it stands as of June 30th, which is halfway through the year. Everything is in good shape currently after 6 months. The general fund has collected 58% of its revenues. It's spent 49% of its budgeted expenditures. The utility fund is at 49.2% of revenues. If you recall, over the last several years, we're usually a little bit under 50% at this time. And then after the next time I'll come here, like at the end of August, we've easily caught back up with water sales. The expenditures on the water utilities at 47%, so it's under 50% there, which is good. We started the year with 13.4 million. We're currently at 16.9 million in the bank at June 30th. We've collected most of the property taxes revenues that we'll get for the year. We get them distributed from the county per state statute in January and June of each year. They'll just be like motor vehicle taxes and some delinquent taxes that roll in through the rest of the year. So,
Jamie, how many property taxes are in arrears for Pittsburgh? Do you know?
I'm using 4.5% as delinquency right now, based upon the last.
This is about how much money?
About 300,000 probably.
So those people that owe that money, they're relying on the rest of the population to
that's
fund it.
Like when I do the 2020 budget, you guys got.
Uh-huh.
The tax levy is what you need to budget, but you got to know that you're not going to collect that. But if you don't levy it, you'll never collect it. So levying it at least gets it on the roll so it's out there. So I'm using like 4.5% for 2019 that we won't collect for the year. That was against what was levied last year when we did the 2019 budget.
Do we have any power in collecting any of this, or is that all through the county?
We can make noise with the county, but it's generally, I believe, and Henry can speak up, I think it's the county's domain for tax delinquency. I think theoretically or statutorily, it's 3 years and you're eligible to be on a sheriff's sale, is that correct?
Yeah, I think the latest sheriff's sale is 2015.
Yeah. Recall correctly. But you know, some taxpayers just go to that third year limit, then they pay that third year back, so they never really get caught up.
So they're cheating the rest of us.
Well.
Okay.
So the list comes out in the paper when? Usually in August or the page? And
I don't know what their schedule is on that.
We don't contribute.
Yeah.
To the payment for them to post that in the paper?
No, that's on them. Everything's in the green in the revenue side, which is good. And same thing on the expenditure side, we're not overexpending anywhere other than by cyclical things that cause things to look askew there.
I noticed the library and the debt service are considerably ahead of the rest of these.
That's because the library source of income is the property tax from their mill rate they set, and we collect those funds in January and June, and then it's.
I knew you'd have an answer for that.
Then it'll spend out in the next 6 months, and on the same way on the debt service fund, it looks like there's a lot of money there, but I have most of our principal and interest payments due in September, so I can collect the money to make those payments, and that'll pay out in September.
And on the expenditure side, can you speak to the street and highway sales tax at the 64%?
It's because of all these road projects we got going on. We're in construction season right now, and I include purchase orders or encumbrances that we have contracts on. The money hasn't been spent yet, but it's been incurred as a future expense, so I go ahead and show that. So what I'm showing on the far right is our unencumbered cash, is what we got we can use if we need it, that hasn't been encumbered in some way. We talked about South Broadway, North Broadway earlier. That project's approximately $1 million. And I haven't made a payment on it yet, so that money will be spent down as well.
And that's not combined with any Clink or KDOT, that's all on
That's
us.
that's on us. There is no Clink projects anymore. They've got what's called a CLIP, and we're not eligible for a CLIP on this. So this funding of the paving on Broadway is all city-borne through the street sales tax funds.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jamie.
Good job, Jamie.
Okay. Under non-agenda reports and requests, Darren, do you have anything for us?
A couple of things. We want to acknowledge for sure the 4th of July effort that the staff put out with the volunteers, the vendors. It was a hot day. The rain stayed away, but Kim said the turnout was huge, and obviously the fireworks show was the finale. That's not where the work ended for the staff. They still had to get everybody out of the park safely, the police. Everybody had a hand to pitch in, so I want to make sure we acknowledge them. If anybody hasn't noticed, and you wonder what $1 million worth of asphalt looks like, just drive up and down Broadway from tip to tip. It's starting to happen. I know there's a lot of people that are frustrated with the streets, the potholes and everything else. I think it's important to note that if you put out a number of what it would actually take to adequately take care of all the streets every year, it'd be well over the $10 million mark. We have $2 million, and as Jamie just explained, a large chunk of that, since we have a pay-as-you-go program, has to make up for the fact that the state no longer gives us almost $250,000 a year. So you have to hold on to that money and let it build up in order to get enough money to do those big projects. So appreciate everybody's patience, and I appreciate that they're actually getting to it, and I really appreciate the explanation on striping today. And then finally, we did have an email I sent to all of you about monthly reports. I hope Sarah's still here. If there was any feedback, I had feedback from one of you, but I just wanted to make sure I gave her a chance. She asked to have that dialogue. I thought it'd be better if you guys just give her feedback directly, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but here's Sarah.
Do you want to restate what we're
Yeah,
talking about?
sure. Good evening. Yeah, for a little over a year, we've been compiling department reports every month to give you, the commissioners, a recap of what's going on in each department, so you stay up to date. Originally, we sort of reinstated a report that we had, weren't sending out before, because we had some new commissioners come on, and we wanted to just get you up to speed on what each department did and give you a snapshot of what activities and tasks that they have on their plate. It's a week's worth of information, so it's sort of like a week snapshot, but it's sent out monthly, and I've been doing that for a little over a year and just wanted to get your feedback on the frequency, the amount of information, and the format. Do you find it helpful or valuable? Would you like it in a different format? And if so, what can we do? You don't have to have an answer tonight, but if you have any feedback, I would be happy to hear it.
Well, for me, the little bit that you send, it sounds like it's a process that's kind of, the department heads have to make time to do this, and it might be time consuming for them. For me, and I don't know about the rest of them, if I have a question, somebody calls me with a question, I just call the department heads and they answer it right there. So kind of stay up on this without that report they have to fill out, so that's my thoughts on it.
Okay, thank you.
So the data that they're providing you for that report isn't something that they routinely report as part of their job?
Well, they, as I mentioned before, we used to do a weekly report, is that correct? But before I came on board, there was a weekly report that was put together by the departments, and this was just to facilitate, educating you guys on
Maybe this is something we could talk about at our next strategic planning session, in terms of what are we looking for and what do we need.
I do like the department reports. I read them. I find them helpful. I also assumed that the departments were gathering this information anyway, just as part of their own record keeping. So I like them. But yeah, I think strategic planning session would be a good place to talk about it.
Dan?
No, I've found them helpful. I'd be in favor of continuing to
Yeah.
come in that time.
As I responded to Darren, I know that everybody's busy, but I don't think, to me, these reports are not so extensive that I can't see that if you kept a pad on your desk and jotted down a bullet
What you do.
time to time, that it would be that labor intensive, and I, for one, think it's valuable for us, or for myself anyway.
Great. Well, again, I just really value your feedback, and it's always great to hear from you what you need and what you like to hear. So thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you,
Sarah.
Sarah.
So I've got,
Yes, do you have some more information for us?
oh yeah, we're circling all the way back around. The question on, so the question has come up several times. Was the street sales tax used to fund the approach? No, the street sales tax was not used. The city has a contract with Sproul's. They're a Missouri corporation that was competitively bid by the governing body a couple of years ago. That contract, with its annual renewals, goes through 2020. It specifically says in that contract, the work that's approved to do as part of it is concrete approaches. So obviously, that's the contractor that we use. That's who does our concrete work. The source of the funds was the economic development sales tax. This is a housing development with a road out front. I think it came in at $30,244, and that's the source, that's the process, and that's the contractor.
I have a couple questions, just to get some facts on this. What I've been reading in the paper and watching on the news. I had no knowledge of the city's involvement in this approach till read in the paper one day that we trespassed in the Frontenac. I just wonder why, as a commission, we weren't notified that the city was going to do this. Why did we have to read that in the paper?
I don't know why you read it in the paper. Frontenac's, I wouldn't begin to speak to Frontenac's response.
No, I'm asking you.
It was done. Do you want me to answer, or do you want to ask another question?
No, I'm asking you. I don't know. Frontenac is not my concern. My concern is the commissioner of the city of Pittsburgh, and I want to know from you why we weren't notified by you before we did this.
Well, I didn't see the need to notify you for doing it. It was a common project. It was a contractor we always use. It was a contract that you've already voted on. You approved the expenditure in December, whether you read the bills or not. It was before you. We don't traditionally bring these to you, and quite frankly, as I said numerous times, the staff never thought there would be any point. I didn't contact you when we fixed the sewer main in Frontenac. We don't notify you every time we salt or sand the road in Frontenac. I don't notify you every time we stripe the road in Frontenac. And I definitely didn't see any need to notify you when we put concrete on an approach that serves 20 homes right in front of the city
Frontenac.
line.
And my next question would be, Henry, surely we knew that was the city of Frontenac, and as our city attorney, you would have advised us whether we should do that or not do it to keep us out of maybe a possible legal issue we're in now. So what would have been your advice for the city to put a concrete road into Frontenac, an approach?
Let's be very clear, it's
An
not a road.
approach.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Chuck, I really don't think an open meeting is appropriate time to discuss things that might be privileged in the attorney-client.
All right, I understand that, and Darren said the money was $30,244 that came from the revolving loan fund, Now, I know and since I've been a commissioner, and I would like to know that when we have a request for funds from that, it goes to the EDAC committee, and they make a recommendation back to us, and we vote to approve that. I just wonder why that didn't happen at this point.
Because that's not factual. You don't understand how the
This is the
committee works.
information I got
Are you
from
gonna
you.
let me answer this since
Go
you're
ahead.
starting all this, Commissioner? Thank you. You've been on here for 6 years. The EDAC has been in existence for much longer than that. The EDAC has numerous expenditures that come out of that committee. They are tasked with, and I quote, "to screen the applications of those applying for assistance, take those applications and make recommendations to the governing body with regard to such applications." There is no restriction on them to approve or recommend anything with regards to the expending of that sales tax outside of those recommendations. If you understood it any other way, that's fine, but that is the requirement. With respect to actually spending the street sales, the revolving loan funds, the economic development sales tax, the expectation is usually a pretty clear process, with the exception of lunches or some very small things that Blake and I attend that we charge to that, or in the case of a couple of contributions to Pitt State for, I don't even know what it was, the gymnastics equipment, the Baja, other things, those don't go before. Approving expenditures like that do not go. In this case, it was an exception because usually we take applications to the Economic Development Advisory Committee. They make a recommendation, and they recommend as an advisory board to the city commission, who has the authority for spending city money. In this case, since we used a city contractor that was already previously approved by the city commission, there was no formal reason to take it back to the EDAC, since you have the authority to spend that money, and you did. Now, that being said, we've always had, since Blake and I have been there, I think we've had a pretty good run with the EDAC, where even if it's not economic development tax money, if anybody was looking for an incentive of any kind, we've gone to that board, we've asked their input, and for the most part, we give reports as requested that update them on all the expenditures, so any of the expenditures that I just described that wouldn't have been approved or recommended by their board, they would see. In this case, that hasn't happened. And I've talked to at least 2 board members. The easiest way to fix that is not found in any of the governing legislation that requires what we're supposed to do with this board, but would be by something the board would pass to just basically say, if we had a way every month to get an accounting of that month's expenses, then this would have come up last September when it was incurred, and it would have been a moot point. But based on the fact that you're the governing body and you spent the money, it never occurred to us to go back and inform the board, because we weren't asking them to make a recommendation. It had already happened.
So,
I think, go ahead.
so there's a meeting tomorrow?
Yeah.
And you've talked to a couple of the advisory committee, it's not, I don't think it's a board. Is that something that you're gonna talk through on, maybe clarifying what their role would be in something like this? Is that?
Well, we have several new members, recent members, and we have 2 members that are gonna go off at the end of the year. I think this is a really good opportunity to stop and say, hey, we don't have any bylaws. We have an ordinance that was passed, and then that ordinance was amended and added this committee. And then I just read to you the lion's share of any, basically anything that was useful towards this decision that happened. So I think there's some, we all inherit things, and I think we need to have them have the opportunity to say, look, this isn't good for anybody. If you guys are that put off by the $30,000 expenditure, I think they would hopefully acknowledge that the city commission has a contract, and the staff knows what they're doing, and we did a good project, and we did it with the right funds, the right way. But I think it'd be nice if we had something where it said every 30 days we go back and just so there is no surprises, because quite frankly, there's always going to be surprises. And no matter how much time we spend trying to keep everybody in the loop, life goes on and the staff, you know. And back to Chuck's original question, you know, the staff looked at this in September, had no idea that it would even be an issue. Have a pretty clear understanding right now, the relationship that we apparently don't have with Frontenac. And I appreciate your leadership as we went and met with them, but that can't be controlled. It was a very solid project. It was a very responsible project. It was an appropriate use of the funds. And I have no explanation for why Frontenac's acting the way they are, but that's up to Frontenac and I won't speak for them.
I think it's, for a lot of folks who have dialed into this issue, that it would behoove you to take a short trip and go out and look at this development and see what a good addition it is to the area. Beyond that, Darren alluded to the fact that the city of Pittsburgh is maintaining Atkinson. Is that right?
Half of it used to be, I don't know if it's
No,
the
the
whole
city
thing.
of Pittsburgh is maintaining, it's doing all the striping, it's doing
Darren,
the
you don't
snow-
have to have,
It's
I just
doing
asked a
all the
question.
salting.
He's answering.
It's doing
Oh,
all the
okay.
salting, so it's not half of it. It's doing the entire road, and we don't have a problem with it, and we've never even considered that it was an issue. But it's something that we've been doing for over 2 decades, and it's commonplace. And, you know, that's probably the main reason that we thought, we'll just knock this out and move on, and never, you know, the staff never really batted an eye.
And you came in the middle of the night and put this approach in, right?
Well,
Can I just like ask you to say that again, just to make sure I heard it correctly? Even the part of Atkinson, so Atkinson does this and it's half and half, and then Atkinson spikes up, and that's Frontenac. Even that part that spikes up, that's Frontenac, we stripe that road and we salt that in the winter?
that's my understanding.
I would, yeah, I mean,
But I think the important thing is, it's, you know, obviously what's important is something has changed.
yeah.
And to the extent that we've disconnected with the EDAC, it's something we can correct. We're definitely pretty clear that even if it's not for this particular improvement, there's got to be some agreement going in the future, because my guys aren't going to allow me to tell them they can't go if their counterparts and their friends in Frontenac call and say we have an issue, and vice versa. So I'm hoping we can move through it. I appreciate that there's questions. I know there's always questions with everything we do. And I want to stand behind the staff, because I know the staff acted in the best interest of the region and this community. And like I said before, I'm not trying to point a finger at Frontenac. I am completely confused by the reaction. I understand that they can make the point that it's a trespass or whatever they want to, but the reality is our crews work in their community, not regularly, but annually, doing things without any thought. And the fact that this one, which was not a detriment to their community, but an improvement in their community, I believe it's probably tied to the fact that it serves 20 houses in Pittsburgh, because that was mentioned in the newspaper article. And it seemed a little out of place because I didn't really understand it, but I do think that we have some work to do on our relationship with the community of Frontenac, and I appreciate Don's efforts and Henry's, and I will continue to try to do what I can. But I don't have an answer as to why this turned out to be what it was. I can guarantee you, I have an answer for why it was done, and it was done as a very professional improvement that we thought would only help both our communities. And I apologize again, because I think I need to the EDAC, because we're pretty synced up with them. And the fact that 6 months has gone by and they're like, whoa, hey, what? You know, and I'm like, well, that's when the commission acts, we don't usually stop and go back and ask everybody if it's okay. That's what the commission does. And that's on staff, and we understand that.
Two things. One more time. For free, we maintain that part of Atkinson that's Frontenac's. Do we bill them for that, for the striping, for the salting? I mean,
It's kind of hard to
I
solve half a road.
appreciate, I appreciate that you don't have an answer right here
And
on the
it's not,
spot, but
and to Commissioner Munsell's point, you know, if you have a road and it's do not pass and it's a double solid, we're not gonna put down the southbound line and expect them to come put down the northbound line.
yeah,
You just do things in your community on shared space.
right.
And most of these things, when you do have an issue in the right-of-way like this, they're handled administratively through agreements, not through litigation, which is why it's such a surprise.
Well, I'd like to have seen that discussion held before we did it. Explain to them what we do for them, and maybe when we put this in, we wouldn't be in the position we was in. So I think if we would sit down beforehand and talk to Frontenac, maybe we wouldn't be in the shape we're in right now.
And the
I
question
think
to
that's
that
a fair
is,
statement, and I think
Yeah.
going forward, that's definitely something that we want to make sure anytime there's
Exactly.
any kind of, anything in question.
and the question we had for that is, when and where does it start?
Right.
Obviously,
Where's
we've
stop?
done this numerous times and never heard anything. So now that it's happened, yeah, it's real easy to say, well, hey, it would have been nice if I'd have known what the winning numbers were in the Powerball 5 years ago. But the reality is, I know what they are now. So we will definitely move forward, act in a different way. And
my
had we had any inclination, we would have done it beforehand.
And there wasn't any inclination after our meeting, our joint meeting. Something happened at the.
No, this is all, you know, this is all news to us. I
My
mean, we're
second
reacting.
thing is that, I think, I think the EDAC, I mean, they need bylaws, right? You said they don't have bylaws.
I'd like to see them, I mean, if there are.
Yeah, I think that would be
They
a
don't have
good,
any, that's the point. I read you,
Right,
they
okay.
have,
Well, she's
They have
asking
two
you the
ordinances.
question.
yeah.
She wants.
a good exercise,
So that's
for the EDAC. And, you know, also maybe just write an updated description of what everybody sees the role of that advisory committee being. If
Well,
it,
there
it's
is
been a long.
I mean, we have the role. There's an ordinance, right?
Yeah, I read from it.
Yeah,
It's the,
so-
it's the,
Oh, okay.
but,
It's
but
really
I think
the
that's,
process.
I think when you ask them, when we ask them for the 6 years that I've been here to do more than that role, and then when something like this happens, go, well, but all we have to do is this,
Right.
it's confusing to the members.
Right.
Because
Sure,
the members
yeah.
are like, wait a minute, you bring everything in here
Right,
usually,
and now
and
you
it's
didn't
like,
bring that.
and all of a
Yeah.
sudden, it's like, yeah, but we've never had you, the governing body, act on spending money out of there without their prior recommendation. And that's what happened here, and that led to the
Perhaps
confusion.
just some clear
We will definitely
definitions.
have a discussion tomorrow about
Well,
bylaws.
in closing, I like to say that we as a city, along with the county, and was it Mulberry and Frontenac, paid for a re-study.
Yeah.
And I thought we all worked pretty well together. And I would like to maintain that relationship we have with Frontenac, and hopefully we can continue that in the future.
I agree.
I have one issue. This issue was so extensively covered by the Morning Sun. And they were so gracious to give the city of Pittsburgh 2 paragraphs at the end of it. Don has a bullet by bullet reply to these issues that their attorney expressed. And I think it would clarify a number of things if she would share those with us.
She has, I mean, I've got a copy. Is that what you're talking about?
I think he wants me to read the bullets.
Yeah, the bullets.
I didn't read the bullets.
But Frederick, I can see your frustration that we only got a couple paragraphs, I guess, is in the Morning Sun, but it is, you know, I guess they're right to put what they want in the paper, you know,
Sure,
freedom of
that's right.
speech.
And it's
so-
our right to respond.
Sure.
You know, just like Tim Fielder talked about how dangerous this is. Is he an engineer?
He's an
He
attorney.
didn't, yeah, I know he is. He's an attorney. He's not a friggin' engineer. We had 2 engineers look at this. And they said, we didn't need to do any kind of study. I mean, it's this kind of misinformation that is detrimental to the whole thing. And it's his influence that has brought us to this point. For what reason, I have no idea. Pittsburgh and Frontenac have always had a little bit of an issue trying to maintain a friendship that is beneficial to us both. And as far as I'm concerned, his attitude has done nothing but deteriorate this. That's
Your point of view.
that's my point of view.
So I don't have to read this, I mean, it can be on the website or whatever, I mean, you guys have copies and.
Yeah.
Well, you
That's
could
fine.
just make sure John gets.
I did
the
give
thing. I
Don
mean,
a copy,
he's.
so. I do have a couple other items if we're.
Sure, go for it.
Absolutely.
Back to fireworks, our favorite topic. Sorry. In the paper, it indicated that the fireworks stand next to Mazzio's contributed, or I don't know if members of the Nazarene Church youth group worked it, and then they contributed to their camp. I guess I would ask someone to follow up with them, because, you know, in all of our conversations, we said if they are supporting a nonprofit, we would consider a reduction in that fee, and if that is truly the case, I would want them to know that before they decided what they wanted to do next year, so.
Thanks for bringing that
Yeah.
up, Don. That's very good.
And then I would like to respond to Cheryl Brooks, because she's been up here a couple times wanting us to address the money that was spent on moving from asphalt to concrete on Silverback Way. You asked us to make a decision. We did make a decision. Chuck made a motion, it died for lack of a second. That is a decision. So we don't need to bring that up anymore. That was a decision. The rest of the commissioners didn't see the value in that. So we're done with that.
And to expand on that, she talks about not taking this money out of economic development. If you don't think building a new subdivision where the homes are $200,000 up, to try to entice, Pittsburgh State did a study, 70% of the people in Pittsburgh, Kansas that make $90,000 and up live someplace else. You don't think that bringing these homes into Pittsburgh, even though they're across your fence, is not beneficial, is not economic development? I think you are coming from a different place, because it definitely is economic development. And that's my reply to that. Anything else? Uh-oh.
Oh, Brittany's here.
Oh, my.
Land use plan.
Hello.
Good evening.
Back in March or April, you approved our contract with Oxner, Hare & Hare of Olson Engineering for the land use plan. We've been conducting that. You probably saw the survey, the press releases that have gone out. We got over 450 responses to the survey, which was really exciting. That closed on the 26th of June. I've held a 7 or 8 small group interviews with different individuals in different sectors of work across the community. And next week is our charrette week. That's a fancy word for public input that the planners continue to use, despite our pleas to not. During that week, we'll have 2 opportunities for the community and yourselves to come out and give input on this plan. One is Tuesday, July 16th, so a week from today, from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. There will be a visioning session, is what they're calling it. You'll come and participate in small group discussions and a review session of what we've compiled already, and that will provide a guideline for what you'll see on next Wednesday, July 17th, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. You'll walk through, it'll be interactive, you can make edits to the things on the wall, talk to our consultants directly, and make your voice and concerns heard. So if you haven't had an opportunity on the survey or interview, please come out next week and make your voice heard. The more input we have, the more accurate our plan is, and that's ultimately our goal. So, thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Good job, Britton.
One more.
Matt, gotta go last.
We're ending with roads.
For anyone else that's still following along at home, if you know someone who lives on Stillwell, south of Centennial, there is an outside chance as they progress through this week that they will be there Saturday. paving in that area, so we ask you not, I'll try to get a press release out tomorrow. I just found out late this afternoon as things are going, and it turns black and doesn't rain, so we're dodging some bullets, but, there's an outside chance they may be paving on Stillwell in that area, that Random Estates area on Saturday, so I just ask,
Who's paving that?
Heckard
Heckard?
Construction was a little bit, so, all the milling's done, but there's a chance they'll be down paving in there on Saturday. So we just ask you don't park on the side streets and those type of things, so.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, sir. Anything else? We'll look for.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Been moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye.
I have one question.
Okay.
Darren, here. Sorry about it. Penny Mayfield, I live out 580.
Come on over.
I used to wait on